Hello and welcome to Dreamframer Photography. Today we are continuing our story about layers in Photoshop, but this time we're going to be talking about the group of blend modes that I probably use the most, and those are contrast blend modes. We have a lot of things to cover, so I'm not going to talk anymore. Just to remind you that if you find this video helpful, press that like button and also subscribe for more videos like this. Okay guys, let's see what the group of contrast blend modes in Photoshop can do. I took this picture in Bosnia and Herzegovina. This bridge is called Stari Most and the city is called Mostar. This bridge is about half a millennium old. So as usual, I opened the image and Photoshop placed it in the background layer, and if I want to experiment with blend modes, I will have to add a new layer. So I'm gonna click down here and add a new layer. The layer is now completely empty, so it doesn't matter which blend mode I choose, we are not gonna see any change on our main image. So this whole group is called contrast blend modes, and as the name says, they are changing the contrast on the layer below. And that's very obvious if you use neutral tones. However, if you use any color to paint over this blend layer on the top, you will also have the change in the color or saturation. So let's start with overlay. Overlay blend mode works like multiply and screen modes together. If you had a chance to watch my previous video, then you will know that multiply blend mode basically darkens your image and screen blend mode lightens up the image. So overlay works as the combination of these two. If you didn't watch that video, you can click on the card that showed up right now on the screen, or you can go to my playlist Photoshop Tutorials and find a video working with layers in Photoshop Part 2. Okay, let's see what's gonna happen if I start painting over the image with some color lighter than 50% gray. And then I'm gonna switch the color to something darker than 50% gray and paint again over another part of the image. So our top layer is active and overlay blend mode is active as well. I'm gonna click here and choose pure white. Okay, our brush is active as well, 100% opacity for the brush. I'm gonna increase the size of the brush a little bit, and as you can see, as I'm painting, this part of the image looks brighter and also has more contrast. Now let me switch to pure black. And I'm gonna paint over here. Now you can see that this part of the image becomes much darker and also has more contrast than before. You can always decrease the strength of the effect by decreasing the opacity of the blend layer. Never forget that. You can do that with any blend mode. Now let me change the color to something more neutral. Let's say light gray. So this is still lighter than 50% gray. Okay. Now I'm painting over the same part of the image, and you can see that the image is not that bright anymore and we have less contrast, but this is still lighter than the original image. Now let me switch blend mode to normal for the top layer. Now you can see what we painted actually. But if I switch back to overlay, we have this lightening and darkening effect. You can also use colors. You don't have to use neutral tones for this, but you will get lightening and darkening effect plus the color. Now we have soft light. Soft light is a blend mode that I use all the time when I want to darken or lighten parts of the image. And we have hard light, which is similar to overlay, but it has less contrast overall. However, if you use pure white or pure black on the image with hard light mode, those parts of the image will become pure white or pure black, which is not the case in overlay blend mode. Let's switch to hard light and see our image again. So as you can see, where we used black, the result is black, but not over here because we used gray. But if I use white instead, then the result is just white. So that's where the difference between overlay and hard light blend modes is the most noticeable. Let's switch to overlay again to see the difference. So with overlay mode we had contrast and we had darkening and lightening effect, but with hard light we have these extreme results because we used just black and white. Soft light, however, gives us more subtle result. more subtle than even overlay. This is overlay now. Okay, let's go back to hard light now. You can use these three blend modes to add shadows and brighten up parts of the image. And there is a good way to do that, especially if you want to build up the effect. So let me delete the top layer to show you that. So I'm gonna drag the top layer down to the trash can, and I'm gonna add a new layer. I'm gonna change the blend mode for this layer to overlay, and I'm gonna fill it with 50% gray. To do that, I'm gonna go to Edit, Fill, and choose 50% gray. Because we used 50% gray, none of these blend modes work with 50% gray, so the result that we see on the screen is just the same image as we had before, the original image, right? Let me show you how to add shadows or brighten up parts of the image. I'm gonna click on my dodge tool. Up here, I'm gonna choose midtones for the range, because 50% gray is a midtone, right? And exposure for the dodge tool, I'm gonna leave it 100%. And now I'm gonna start painting over here. So you can see that the effect is very subtle but looks very natural. And if you take a look at the thumbnail, you're gonna see that we actually brighten up this gray a little bit. So now if I go over that part again with my dodge tool, I'm gonna brighten up more. If I want to darken parts of the image, I'm gonna choose Burn tool. And let's say I want to darken this part of the image, and you can see that on the thumbnail as well. So this is a good way to add shadows or brighten up parts of the image. You can always use opacity to change the strength of this effect. Let me choose normal blend mode to see how our layer actually looks like. So this is where we used Burn tool, and this is where we used Dodge tool. Let me switch back to overlay. So this is overlay mode. In soft light mode, we're gonna have the same effect, just less of it. You can see how natural it looks like. Let me turn off the visibility for the top layer. So this is the original image, and this is what we did. Now if I switch to hard light, we're gonna have more of that darkening and lightening, but less contrast than in the case of overlay mode. So this is overlay. You can see the branches and everything. If I switch back to hard light, you can see that we lessen the contrast in those parts of the image, but we have this brightening and darkening effect. Now let's try with some color, just to play a little. I chose the brightest red, and as you can see, because we are in hard light blend mode, we have the same kind of effect like when we used white. We completely covered this part of the image with red. However, if I change the blend mode to soft light, then you can see the branches through our blend layer, and the effect is not so harsh. Now if I switch to some lighter color, like this one, then of course we have less of a coloring effect, but we still have that brightening. You can always, of course, decrease the opacity. I'm reminding you all the time about that. Don't forget about that. Let's try some color that is still lighter than 50% gray. Let's say this green here. And I'm gonna paint on this part of the image. The image here becomes green and lighter, and that's because we chose green color that was lighter than 50% gray. See? And now if I move to the darker green, we're gonna have darkening effect as well as some coloring. So this is how you can add color to the image along with darkening and lightening. Now let's move to Vivid Light Blend Mode. Vivid Light Blend Mode works as a combination of Color Burn and Color Dodge blend modes, and it's similar to Hard Light and Soft Light combination, but it adds some saturation, especially to the shadows. So let me click on Vivid Light to show you that. You can see now how those parts of the image that we painted with green and red have a lot more contrast now, as well as saturation in the shadows. If I switch back to hard light, you can see that we lost a lot of that contrast while the color is still there. If I change the blend modes to vivid light, we have our contrast back, and it looks like the colors in the shadows are more saturated. And that's basically the main difference between hard light and vivid light. In the case of hard light, you don't have that contrast. If we don't use colors, let's say choose some gray and paint over our image, so now we are in hard light blend mode. And let's say we paint with light gray over here. This is what we get. A lot less contrast. But now if we switch to vivid light, we have a lot more contrast. Let's compare vivid light with overlay. So this is overlay mode now. You can see how vivid light is much more extreme than overlay blend mode. As you're getting closer to 50% gray, the difference between overlay and vivid light will be less noticeable. Let's click on linear light blend mode now. This blend mode works as a combination of linear burn and linear dodge, and it has that extreme darkening and brightening effect. If we compare linear light with overlay, you can see how much harsher linear light is, especially if as blend colors we use colors that are close to white and black. And of course, never forget about the opacity slider. You can always use it to decrease the strength of the effect. I want to show you now another way of using these blend modes to change the contrast on the image. I'm gonna delete the top layer, and I'm just gonna copy the background layer, and I'm gonna change the blend mode to overlay for the top layer. Now look at the contrast. The pixels of these two layers are the same, so wherever we have pixels darker than 50% gray, multiply effect will be applied and we will have darker parts of the image. Wherever pixels are lighter than 50% gray, we will have screen effect, and those areas will become lighter. You can always use opacity slider to decrease the effect. Or you can change the blend mode to, let's say, soft light and have less of the contrast. Let me turn off the top layer. This is the original image and this is soft light. And then if we switch to hard light, we will have more of that contrast. With vivid light, even more contrast and some more saturation as well. So basically, when you want to add the contrast, test all of these blend modes and see what works the best. So linear light gives us even more contrast, as you can see. And then pin light. Pin light works as a combination of darken and lighten blend mode. So wherever you have something darker than 50% gray, darken mode will be applied, and wherever you have lighter tones than 50% gray, lighten mode will be applied. However, because both of our layers are the same, we will not see any change if we switch to pin light blend mode, because all the pixels are the same. So this is the original image. If I turn on or turn off the top layer, we don't see any change, because these two layers are the same. Let me delete the top layer now and add a new layer. I'm gonna switch the blend mode to pin light, and now I'm gonna use the color that is almost white and start painting over this wall over here. So now you can see that because we chose the tone that is lighter than 50% gray, only lighten blend mode will be applied, and we will see only the pixels that are lightest from the two layers. If I switch the color to something darker than 50% gray, then the darken blend mode will be applied, and we will see only the darkest pixels from the two layers. Now, I know this is all very confusing, and that's why you have to play with blend modes to learn how they work. Your goal should be to learn how these groups work in general, so you know when you have to do something on the image, you know where to go. Let's choose some color, some darker red. If I paint over our image, we will have darken blend mode applied as well as red color. So you can have some interesting effects using these blend modes. Let me choose even darker red. Now we see less details on the wall because this red is darker than some of those details from the background layer. We still have our darken mode applied. I don't remember I ever used pin light blend mode, and I also never used hard mix. Hard mix is the blend mode that will turn your image into just few colors, because it picks up the information from all the separate channels, red, green and blue, and blends two layers in a very specific way. So now you can see that where we use dark red, we only see black and red. If I change the chosen color to something close to white and paint over our image again, then this is what we get. We get just white and black basically. If I use some darker tone, something close to black, and start painting over our image again, this is what we get now. We get just cyan, blue, red, yellow, white and black. And let's see how it works with colors. So with this dark red, we are getting some red, magenta, white and black, and now our photo looks more like an illustration than like a photograph, right? So these were all the contrast blend modes. This was a lot of information and no one can really remember this, so the only way to learn this is to open Photoshop and experiment until you remember which blend mode does what. I have to admit it's not very easy to make a video tutorial on something like blend modes in Photoshop because they can do so many things, and if we get into more detail than this, you're gonna get even more confused. So for now your goal should be to understand each group and what it does. And next time when you edit an image, you will know where to go if you need to increase the contrast or lighten up the image or darken the image. When you learn and understand that, it's gonna be much easier to experiment between those blend modes in one group to get the desired result. So again, if this video helped you, don't forget to press that like button, leave a comment, ask me a question, and also subscribe if you still haven't. See you soon. Bye.